From moonwalking across the stage with the Jackson 5 to battling lawsuits, scandals, and even the threat of losing everything, Jermaine Jackson's life is a story no one expected to unfold this way. Once celebrated as one of the brightest stars of the legendary Jackson family, Jermaine wasn't just Michael's older brother, he was the voice that gave the group its soulful balance, the smooth contrast to Michael's electric energy. But behind the fame and the music, Jermaine's journey would take a shocking turn. Court battles, financial struggles, and family drama turned his once golden legacy into a painful story of survival. The rise and fall of Jermaine Jackson is more than just another Hollywood tragedy. It's a raw and unfiltered look at how quickly fortune can fade and how even a legend can be pushed to the edge. When fans heard the name Jermaine Jackson, they thought of glittering stages, screaming crowds, and Motown magic. But behind the flashing lights and glossy magazine covers was a hidden story, a story that only a few knew, and even fewer believed. You won't believe how fast everything began to change for him. And let me tell you, this is where it gets interesting. Back in the late 1960s and early 1970s, Jermaine wasn't just living the dream, he was the dream. As a member of the Jackson 5, he traveled the world, performed for millions, and became a teenage heartthrob overnight. With smash hits like I Want You Back dominating the charts, Jermaine's fame seemed unstoppable. He wasn't just Michael's older brother standing in the shadows, he was a star in his own right, with a smooth, soulful voice that audiences couldn't resist. But then came the move that shocked the entire Jackson family. In the early 1970s, when the rest of the group broke away from Motown to sign with Epic Records, Jermaine did the unthinkable. He stayed behind. Why? His loyalty wasn't just to the label. It was also tied to his powerful marriage to Hazel Gordy, the daughter of Motown's founder, Berry Gordy. In that one decision, Jermaine changed the course of his life and career forever. Some called it bold, others called it betrayal. But either way, the consequences were greater than anyone could imagine. Jermaine seemed to have it all: a family name that was respected throughout the world, a solid industry connection, and a promising solo career. Even Jermaine's solo career got off to a strong start. Hits like Let's Get Serious and Daddy's Home demonstrated his talent and helped him carve out a niche for himself in the music business apart from his brothers. He was making a lot of money, and his way of life showed it. Large residences, expensive automobiles, and fancy clothing. Jermaine relished every moment. Nobody could have predicted at that time that he would eventually be struggling to stay afloat. Here's the startling bit though. Jermaine's career didn't develop as quickly as his brothers Michael and Janet, who both achieved enormous success and became worldwide superstars. Although his brilliance was always undeniable, his music didn't achieve the same heights, and he lost favor with the public. The fissures began to show at this point. Jermaine's celebrity gradually diminished over time, but his spending patterns remained constant. Although his profession was stable, it was no longer sufficient to sustain his way of life. This narrative is unique because of how quickly things went wrong. He went from being one of the most well-known vocalists in the world to someone who was privately struggling. Fans still saw him living in upscale areas, wearing pricey clothes, and grinning for the cameras. But few were aware of the problems that was simmering beneath the surface. Opportunities became more difficult to discover, and the money that had seemed limitless began to run out. Jermaine's life was about to undergo a permanent transformation that he could never have predicted when fate took an unexpected turn. As Jermaine Jackson's financial troubles became public knowledge, his reputation as a dazzling star gradually started to wane. It was evident by the late 2000s that Jermaine was no longer leading the idyllic life he had once boasted about. Fans were shocked when court filings revealed how much he was struggling. His monthly income was only around $1,100, a sum that appeared unthinkable for a man who had played in one of the world's most well-known bands. The most absurd thing, I must say, was that he had petitioned a judge to reduce his child support payments from $3 to only $215 a month. Witnessing this was sad and embarrassing for a man who had previously performed on the grandest stages in the world. He asserted that his children's mother was earning more money than he did, and for those who had admired him, This only served to heighten the shock of the situation. This is where things start to get interesting though. His financial situation had taken a serious turn for the worse. This was the beginning of a financial meltdown that appeared to go out of hand. It was discovered that Jermaine had overdue child support debt of around $100,000. The judges cautioned him that jail time was a very real possibility if he failed to pay. All of a sudden, the king of pop himself, Michael Jackson, was facing jail time for outstanding debts. His reputation was totally altered by this discovery. Fans were now reading news about his financial and legal issues rather than the gifted star they recalled. It didn't end there either. His opulent lifestyle was reportedly collapsing. His rental house in Calabasas, which had 5 bedrooms and 6 bathrooms, was up for foreclosure and had a starting offer of almost $2 million. He just didn't have that kind of money. The man who sold millions of records and toured the world was now unable to maintain his house. His entire private life began to be made public, and the media is enamored with the drama. The glitzy picture of Jermaine Jackson strutting the red carpet gave way to tales of bankruptcy, legal troubles, and despair. Another twist then emerged, making the situation appear much more dire. Jermaine said that a suitcase in his house contained $150,000 worth of apparel, furs, and jewelry that had been stolen. This assertion, whether accurate or not, simply served to highlight the pandemonium that around him. People questioned how a man who claimed to be impoverished could have such expensive jewelry. He was accused by his detractors of living much beyond his means and of feigning affluence while neglecting his obligations. His reputation suffered further as a result of the sharp shift in public opinion against him. Here's the startling bit though. Jermaine and the media weren't the only ones involved in the drama. Alejandra Jackson, the mother of 2 of his children, had had enough of his unfulfilled commitments and late payments. She demanded that Jermaine be held responsible by going to the Los Angeles County Child Support Services Department. In a swift move, the courts garnished his earnings, ensuring that every dollar he made would be used to settle his debt. This was a terrible collapse for a man who had once had millions. Alejandra even charged him with intentionally avoiding his financial obligations. She even threatened to put him in jail if he didn't make the payment. Even those who had followed Jermaine Jackson's tribulations for years were astonished by the fresh controversy that erupted in 2023, just when they thought his problems couldn't get much worse. It had nothing to do with money or child support this time. It dealt with a much darker subject. He was accused of sexual assault in the 1980s in a civil case brought against Jermaine. Suddenly, his financial difficulties were not the only thing making headlines. The accusations presented a troubling picture of the singer's past, implying that there were secrets that had been kept buried for decades beneath the meticulously maintained facade of a Jackson family member. The story was unique, since the timing couldn't have been worse. Jermaine's name was already tarnished by years of financial scandals and legal disputes. His entire legacy is now harshly under the spotlight because, to this case, the most bizarre thing, I must say, was how fast the story around him changed. The same supporters who had previously supported him started to doubt not only his decisions, but also his moral fiber. The tale of a man who mishandled his finances has changed. This was something more profound, something that changed the way people saw him. The harm was already done, despite Jermaine's denial of the accusations. He was no longer merely a struggling musician in the eyes of the public. He was a man whose whole history was under scrutiny. The Jackson family had already endured years of conflicts, scandals, and media storms involving Janet, Michael, and other siblings. However, it felt like old wounds were being reopened by this case against Jermaine. Instead of portraying the family as music royalty, every magazine cover and internet headline portrayed them as a dynasty of turmoil and controversy. For those who had once revered him, this lawsuit was the last straw as destiny took an unexpected turn for Jermaine. This scandal came at a terrible time. Jermaine had spent years attempting to reestablish his reputation in the music industry by attending events and doing interviews. However, all of that effort was undone as soon as the case was made public. Music and celebrity were no longer the only aspects of his life narrative. It was about suspicion, treachery, and shame. Critics and admirers started discussing his morality in addition to his professional decisions. Was Jermaine Jackson only the victim of a vicious media apparatus? Or had everything he had created been destroyed by his own actions? This is how his demise became a far more profound tale rather than merely a financial catastrophe. For many years, Jermaine was regarded as a founding member of the Jackson 5 and a contributor to the history of Motown. However, his name was suddenly associated with something far more sinister than foreclosures or late payments. The lawsuit's mere existence was sufficient to uphold his legacy indefinitely, regardless of whether it was ever shown to be accurate. Jermaine's name became a trending topic for all the wrong reasons as the media frenzy intensified. One of the saddest stories in music history is that of Jermaine Jackson, a reminder of the fleeting nature of celebrity and the potential for even the greatest stars to fail. He was once hailed as a Motown phenomenon who performed hit after hit while traveling the world, but his skill was overshadowed by scandals, lawsuits, and financial collapse. His fans, who had grown up admiring him, were astounded by the change. His delayed child support payments, foreclosures, and the startling lawsuit that pursued him decades later were all covered in the same periodicals that had once hailed his voice and style. The fact that Jermaine was from one of the most well-known families in the world only serves to heighten the tragedy of the tale. He might never be able to shake the shadows of controversy, though. The public's perception only became more critical over time. Jermaine was no longer the Jackson 5 soulful vocalist in the eyes of many. He had turned into a cautionary tale of terrible business judgments, poor financial mistakes, and personal problems that ruined his reputation. Others contended that his story was a product of the harsh reality of the music business, which exploited up-and-coming artists for financial gain before dumping them when the limelight shifted. Nevertheless, the 2023 legal suit felt like the last straw, linking his name to an issue that no amount of success in music could dispel. The once adored Jackson brother had turned into a representation of lost chances, and the mayhem around him seemed to follow him wherever. Let me tell you, Jermaine Jackson's destiny affected everything in an unforeseen way. The harm to his reputation was too great, despite the fact that several backed him and held fame responsible for his demise. No longer was he merely a man who had lost his riches. He came to represent the shadowy aspect of celebrity that no one wanted to witness. His descent from fame to scandal made everyone wonder about everything. Was there anything he could have done better? Did people who benefited from his talent overlook him? Or did he grow up in a world of renown before he was mature enough to comprehend it? His fate predetermined from the beginning? This is how the story of Jermaine Jackson became far more than the errors of one man. It turned into a lesson on the price of celebrity, the strain of growing up in the public eye, and the enduring effects of individual decisions. His life is still a subject of discussion among both admirers and detractors. He is viewed by some as a victim of the music industry's machinery, and by others as a man who had every chance but lost them all. There is no doubt that Jermaine's name will always be associated with both awe and controversy, a reminder that there might be a far worse reality hidden behind every glistening stage and yelling audience.